Today was supposed to be our anniversary, but as the stadium lights flashed and the kiss cam zoomed in, Tyler didn't look for his wife. He grabbed supermodel Amber Sky and gave the world a 4K show of my heartbreaking. "It's just for the brand, Elena," he used to whisper. But as the crowd roared, I realized I wasn't his partner. I was just his shadow. Little did he know, the plain wife died in that seat, and the woman who would take his entire empire was just getting started. The stadium roar was supposed to be for a game, but instead, it signaled the public execution of Elena Vance's marriage. For 5 years, she had been Tyler Brooks' silent engine, the brilliant mind managing his books and sculpting the image that made him a high-tier executive. She had traded her own fashion dreams for his corporate ladder, hiding her beauty in oversized navy sweaters so he could be the only star in the room. To him, she was a reliable utility, a ghost in his house who would never stop serving. When Tyler leaned into Amber Sky on national television, he did so with the arrogant certainty that Elena was too small, too plain, and too broken to ever push back. He expected to come home to a weeping wife he could easily manipulate. He didn't realize that the humiliation had acted as a catalyst. As Elena stared at the millions of mocking comments on her phone, a long dormant fire ignited in her hazel green eyes. The creative genius she had suppressed for him was finally breaking free. By the time Tyler's life update video went live to save his reputation, Elena was already gone, leaving nothing behind but an empty navy sweater and a single moving box. She stepped out of his shadow and into the sights of Roman Knight, a man who didn't deal in viral fluff, but in raw power. While Tyler sat back, smugly waiting for Elena to realize she was nothing without him, she was already rebranding herself as Sophia. The day the world laughed at the plain wife was the day she caught the eye of the mogul who would help her take everything. For the first time in 5 years, Elena wasn't just dressing the part, she was owning the stage. The giant screen at the stadium did not just show a kiss. It broadcast a betrayal to the entire world. As the kiss cam circled the crowd with a glowing red heart, it landed on Tyler Brooks. He did not look for his wife. Instead, he grabbed Amber Sky, a famous model with platinum hair, and kissed her with a passion he had not shown Elena in years. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices booming like thunder. Thousands of phones went up in the air, recording the moment from every angle. By the time the camera moved to the next couple, the video was already being uploaded to every social media app on the planet. Elena was sitting on her couch in their quiet living room, wearing her favorite navy knit sweater. Her phone began to buzz so hard it nearly fell off the coffee table. Notification after notification popped up. Millions of strangers were watching her life fall apart in high definition. The comments were cruel. They called her the invisible wife and laughed at how quickly Tyler had replaced her. Her hazel green eyes filled with tears as she watched the man she loved treat another woman like a prize. Before she could even process the pain, a message flashed across her screen. It was from Tyler. There was no "I'm sorry" and no explanation. It simply said, "The footage is viral. Do not post anything. Do not embarrass me. Stay quiet and let my team handle the PR." Elena stared at the cold words until her eyes burned. For 5 years, she had been his shadow, his assistant, and his biggest supporter. She had made herself small so he could feel big. She realized then that Tyler did not see a wife. He saw a hurdle to his brand. She set the phone down with a strange, calm slowness. The sadness was still there, but a new, cold strength was rising underneath it. She did not wait for him to come home and lie to her. She walked to the closet and pulled out a single brown cardboard box. She didn't take the expensive gifts he had bought to show off his wealth. She took her old sketchbooks, her sewing kit, and a few basic clothes. As the sun began to rise, she taped the box shut. Outside, the world was still talking about her. People online were writing her social eulogy, assuming she would hide away in shame forever. They thought the plain wife was defeated. But as Elena walked out the front door and into the morning mist, she wasn't hiding. She was already reimagining her future. Tyler wanted her to stay quiet, and she would, but only until she had something much louder to say. The new apartment was small and smelled of fresh paint. It was a far cry from the glass-walled mansion she had shared with Tyler, but to Elena, the silence felt like freedom. There was no one here to tell her she was too plain or that her ideas didn't fit a certain image. She sat on the floor, the single cardboard box by her side, and pulled out the one thing she had kept hidden for years, her old leather sketchbook. For 5 years, she had tucked her talent away to help Tyler build his career. Now, as she opened the dusty pages, her hands shook slightly. She began to draw. She didn't sketch the tiny, thin dresses that Tyler's model friends wore. Instead, she drew clothes for real women, women with soft curves, full hips, and the same hourglass shape she saw in her own mirror. She designed structured blazers and elegant trousers that felt powerful. She wasn't designing for the plain wife anymore. She was designing for a woman who was ready to be seen. As the days passed, the hazel green color in her eyes seemed to brighten. She wasn't crying anymore. She spent her nights at an old sewing machine, turning her sketches into real fabric. The ivory and champagne silks felt like a second skin. One evening, she picked up her phone. The internet was still full of videos about the kiss cam scandal, but she didn't click on them. Instead, she created a brand new TikTok account. She chose the name Sophia Vance, her middle name, and a piece of her identity Tyler had never been able to touch. She set up her camera in the soft afternoon light. She didn't use filters or heavy makeup. She simply showed her sketches, the fabric, and the confident curve of her own silhouette in one of her new designs. She added just one sentence of text to the video. "This brand is for the women they told to cover up." She hit post and went asleep, expecting nothing. But when she woke up, her phone was hot to the touch. The video had exploded. In just 48 hours, 3 million people had watched it. The comments were no longer mocking her. Women were tagging their friends, calling the designs empowering and revolutionary. They were asking where they could buy the clothes. Tyler had tried to use the internet to erase her, but Elena had used it to build a door. The plain wife was officially gone. Sophia Vance had arrived, and the world was finally paying attention. Roman Knight did not spend his time scrolling through social media. As the head of a massive media empire, his days were filled with board meetings and multi-million-dollar deals. However, greatness has a way of making itself noticed. By noon on Tuesday, the same TikTok video had been sent to his private email by 3 different senior executives. They all said the same thing. This is the next big thing. Sitting in his top floor office, Roman leaned back in his leather chair and pressed play. He watched the screen carefully. He didn't just see a woman in a pretty dress. He saw the way the fabric was cut to give a woman confidence. He saw the smart way the message was framed. The hazel green eyes of the woman in the video were calm, but they held a spark of iron-willed determination. She isn't just selling clothes, Roman whispered to the empty room. She is selling a revolution. He didn't pick up the phone to call her right away. Roman was a man who moved with a quiet, calculated power. He liked to know exactly who he was dealing with before he made a move. He pressed a button on his desk to call in his top assistant. "Find out everything you can about Sophia Vance," Roman commanded, his voice deep and steady. "I want to know where she came from, who she has worked with, and why a talent this big is only just now appearing." For the next hour, Roman ignored his other tasks and studied the files his assistant brought him. He looked at the sketches and the business plan Sophia had quietly put together. He recognized the genius in the designs immediately. He saw how she used light and shadow to make her brand feel expensive but reachable. He was impressed by the intelligence behind the brand long before he realized who she really was. To Roman, she wasn't a victim of a viral scandal or someone's ex-wife. She was a creator who had been hidden in the dark for too long. He looked at the photo of her one last time, noticing the soft ivory skin and the chestnut waves of her hair. Roman Knight had spent his whole life finding the best talent in the world, and his gut told him that Sophia Vance was the crown jewel he had been looking for. He closed the folder with a satisfied smile. The game was about to change, and Tyler Brooks had no idea that his boss was about to become his biggest rival. Tyler Brooks was not the kind of man to let a scandal ruin his perfect image. While Elena was busy sewing in her quiet apartment, Tyler was meeting with expensive public relations experts. He knew he had to change the story before the world turned against him completely. He didn't want to be the villain who cheated on his wife. He wanted to be the victim who had finally escaped a difficult marriage. Within days, the internet was flooded with leaked stories about Elena. Tyler's team planted hints that Elena was unstable and difficult to live with. They suggested that the marriage had been over for a long time and that Tyler had stayed only out of pity. To make the lie look better, Tyler brought Amber Skye to high-profile charity events. The cameras captured Amber looking sweet and sympathetic, pretending to care about the poor while wearing diamonds that cost more than a house. Tyler stood beside her, flashing his confident, crooked smirk, acting as if he had finally found his true soulmate. For a moment, the polished strategy seemed to work. Some people started to wonder if the plain wife really was the problem. Tyler felt powerful again. He walked through the halls of Roman Knight's media company with his head held high, believing he had successfully buried Elena's reputation under a mountain of fake news. But Tyler had forgotten one very important thing. Elena Vance was the one who had managed his books for 5 years. She knew every penny he had spent and every business dinner. That was actually a shopping spree for Amber. While Tyler was busy posing for photos, a sharp financial journalist began to notice strange patterns in Tyler's company expense accounts. The journalist started asking questions that Tyler couldn't answer. Why were there thousands of dollars spent on designer handbags listed as office supplies? Why were luxury hotel stays labeled as client meetings? The polished PR wall began to show deep cracks. Tyler's charm couldn't stop a math problem, and the only person who could explain the truth was the woman he had just tried to destroy. The 2 weeks of Tyler's victory were coming to a very fast and very messy end. He had tried to win the war with lies, but Elena held the receipts. The tide was turning, and this time, no amount of fake smiles could save him from the truth. The launch day for the Sophia Vance collection arrived like a tidal wave. Elena had spent weeks working until her fingers were sore, making sure every stitch was perfect. When the website finally went live at noon, she held her breath. She didn't have to wait long. The digital shop was flooded with thousands of buyers who had been waiting since her TikTok video went viral. In just 6 hours, every single item, the ivory blouses, the emerald trousers, and the gold-trimmed blazers, was marked as sold out. The fashion world, which usually ignored plain newcomers, could no longer look away. Major magazines began writing articles about the Sophia phenomenon. They praised her for making clothes that celebrated real bodies instead of hiding them. Soon, the biggest fashion editor in the country called for an exclusive interview. When Elena walked into the studio for the interview, she looked like a different person. Her chestnut hair was styled in soft, polished waves, and she wore a cream-colored suit of her own design. The reporter immediately tried to ask about the kiss cam and the model who took her husband. But Elena simply offered a calm, confident smile and shook her head. "I am not here to talk about my past," Elena said firmly. "I am here to talk about the future of fashion and the women who wear my clothes." She spoke with intelligence and passion about fabric, structure, and the power of a well-made suit. By refusing to act like a victim, she gained a new kind of respect. She wasn't just a woman who had been cheated on, she was a CEO. The interview went viral, but this time, the comments weren't mocking. People were inspired by her strength and her refusal to beg for pity. Meanwhile, miles away in a lonely hotel room, Tyler Brooks watched the interview on his laptop. He was supposed to be giving a big speech that night, but the event had been quietly canceled after the news of his financial lies started to spread. He watched as Elena's follower count climbed higher and higher, surpassing his own. He looked at the screen, seeing the plain wife transformed into a powerful icon. She looked radiant, successful, and completely unreachable. For the first time, the cold reality hit him. He had tried to trade her in for a model to help his brand, but in doing so, he had lost the only person who knew how to build one. Tyler was stuck in a dark room with a failing career, while the woman he had abandoned was standing in the brightest light of all. Success usually brings many phone calls, but one specific invitation stood out from the rest. A formal email arrived from the headquarters of Night Media. It was a partnership inquiry for an upcoming global gala. Roman Knight's team wanted Sophia Vance to be the lead fashion sponsor. To Elena's small team, this was the ultimate business goal. They saw it as a massive contract that could turn her brand into a household name. Elena approached the day like any other professional leader. She spent hours reviewing her brand's growth, her supply chain, and her vision for the future. She dressed in a sharp, charcoal gray blazer and pulled her chestnut hair into a smooth, professional style. She wanted to be ready for a room full of stony-faced executives. She expected a long table and a difficult negotiation with Roman's assistants. When the glass doors of the conference room opened, however, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't a team of assistants waiting for her. It was Roman Knight himself. According to every business rule, a man of his status should not have been at an initial meeting. He was supposed to be in a board meeting or on a private jet, yet there he was, standing by the window in a perfectly tailored black suit. Roman turned as Elena entered. He didn't look at her like a tabloid subject or a viral victim. He looked at her with a deep, quiet respect. Elena didn't let her surprise show. She sat down, opened her tablet, and began her presentation. She spoke with a calm authority that filled the room. Roman didn't interrupt. He listened, his dark eyes fixed on her as she explained how her clothes empowered women. What was supposed to be a 30-minute check-in turned into a deep discussion about art, business, and the importance of integrity. The conversation flowed so easily that time seemed to disappear. They talked about the gala's theme and how her designs could tell a story on the red carpet. The meeting ran 2 hours over the scheduled time. Throughout the entire afternoon, a name that usually haunted Elena was never uttered. They did not talk about the kiss cam. They did not talk about the model. They did not mention Tyler Brooks once. In that room, Tyler was a ghost that had no power. When Roman finally walked Elena to the door, he held it open for her. "I don't just want your brand, Sophia," he said, using her professional name with a hint of warmth. "I want the vision behind it." As Elena walked away, she felt a different kind of spark. For the first time, she wasn't just being used for her labor, she was being seen for her mind. While Elena's new world was filling with light and success, Tyler's world was becoming a dark and lonely place. The glamorous life he had tried to build with Amber Sky was falling apart faster than a house of cards. Amber was not the kind of woman to stay with a man who was losing his money and his power. As soon as the news of Tyler's financial lies broke, Amber's legal team acted. They filed a massive lawsuit against Tyler, claiming he had committed fraud. The papers alleged that Tyler had lied about how much money he actually had. He had promised Amber a life of luxury while hiding a mountain of debt and unpaid bills. Amber didn't just leave him. She made sure the entire world knew he was a fake. The headlines were brutal. The golden couple of the kiss cam was now a legal disaster. One by one, Tyler's sponsors began to vanish. The luxury watch brands and the high-end car companies didn't want their names anywhere near a man accused of fraud. Tyler sat in his silent office, watching his bank accounts drain and his phone stop ringing. Panic finally began to set in. He realized that the only person who had ever truly looked out for him was the woman he had publicly humiliated. In a moment of desperation, Tyler dialed Elena's number. He waited, his heart pounding, hoping to hear her soft voice. He was ready to give her a speech about how he had made a huge mistake and how they belonged together. But the call went straight to voicemail. He tried again and again, but the silence was his only answer. Elena hadn't just moved out of his house, she had moved out of his reach. He tried calling their mutual friends, but the conversations were short and cold. "We've seen the news, Tyler," one friend said before hanging up. "It's best if we don't talk for a while." No one wanted to be seen with a man who had traded a loyal wife for a model who was now suing him for everything he owned. His last hope was his job. He called Roman Knight's office, expecting to speak to his boss and explain that it was all a big misunderstanding. But he didn't get through to Roman. Instead, a cold-voiced assistant gave him the worst news of all. "Mr. Brooks, due to the recent legal allegations and the damage to the company's image, your executive contract is officially under review." Tyler stared at the wall, the phone slipping from his hand. He had tried to play a game of status and fame, but he had lost every single piece on the board. He was alone, disgraced, and about to be fired by the very man who was currently planning a future with his ex-wife. The invitation to the night media gala arrived at Tyler's desk like a final blow. He opened the heavy envelope, expecting to see his own name listed as a top executive. Instead, his eyes widened in shock. The headline sponsor was not a global bank or a car company. It was Sophia Vance. Underneath, in elegant gold letters, the card announced the upcoming marriage of Roman Knight and his bride, Elena Vance. Tyler felt a wave of hot anger and disbelief. He didn't think about his debts or his failing reputation. He only thought about how the plain wife he had thrown away was now marrying the most powerful man in the city. He grabbed his car keys and drove to Roman's office, his mind racing with a desperate plan to stop the wedding and reclaim his property. He pushed past the security guards and burst into Roman's private office without knocking. "You can't do this, Roman," Tyler shouted, his face red and his breathing heavy. "She's my wife. She's just using you to get back at me. She's nothing without the name I gave her." Roman did not stand up. He sat behind his desk, as calm as a deep ocean. He watched Tyler's temper tantrum with a cold, steady gaze. Every word Tyler shouted, every insult he threw at Elena, only confirmed what Roman already knew. Tyler was not a leader. He was a small, selfish man who couldn't stand to see a woman succeed. "You have a very strange way of showing loyalty, Tyler," Roman said, his voice quiet but dangerous. "You humiliated her on national television, and now you come here to claim you still own her? You are not just a bad husband. You are a liability to this company." Roman stood up, his tall shadow falling over Tyler. "Your contract review is finished. You are fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out, and if you ever step near Elena again, the legal consequences will be much worse than a lost job." As the guards dragged a screaming Tyler out of the building, Roman took a deep breath. He picked up his phone and called Elena. He didn't tell her about the ugly scene or Tyler's desperate cries. He didn't want to ruin her peace. "I'll see you at the altar tomorrow," Roman said softly when she answered. "And remember what I told you. Wear something extraordinary." On the other end of the line, Elena smiled. She looked at the ivory lace dress hanging in her room, the one she had designed with her own hands and her own heart. She didn't need Roman to tell her to be extraordinary. She already was. The grand ballroom was a sea of soft champagne and warm ivory, the exact colors of the Sophia Vance brand. Thousands of white roses hung from the ceiling, and the air smelled like expensive perfume and success. Every person in the room was a powerful leader, a famous artist, or a fashion icon. They weren't there to watch a scandal. They were there to witness the wedding of the year. Outside the heavy gold doors, Tyler Brooks arrived in a wrinkled suit, his eyes wild and desperate. He tried to push his way past the entrance, shouting that he had to speak to the bride. But Roman Knight had prepared for this. For large security guards stepped into his path before he could even see the flowers. Without a word, they gripped his arms and led him away from the building. Tyler's shouts faded into the street noise, unnoticed by the happy crowd inside. Inside the hall, a hush fell over the guests as the music began. Elena appeared at the top of the aisle, and for a moment, it felt as if the world stopped breathing. She was breathtaking in her ivory lace gown, with a long cathedral veil that trailed behind her like a cloud. Her hazel green eyes were bright with a calm, steady light. She didn't look like a woman who had been humiliated. She looked like a queen who had finally found her throne. As she walked toward Roman, the phones in the guests' pockets began to buzz. A new notification was spreading like wildfire. Amber Sky's lawsuit against Tyler had just gone live, detailing every lie and every stolen dollar. The man who had tried to destroy Elena's reputation was now being exposed as a fraud to the entire world at the exact moment she was stepping into her new life. Elena reached the altar and took Roman's hand. His grip was strong and protective. They stood together under the warm glow of the chandeliers, two powerful people who truly respected each other. When it was time to say her vows, Elena's voice did not shake. She said, "I do," with a clear, firm tone that echoed through the room. She didn't look back at the door to see if Tyler was there. She didn't look at the phones showing the scandal. She only looked forward, into the eyes of the man who saw her for who she really was. The ceremony ended with a roar of applause that was louder than any stadium crowd. As the new couple turned to face their guests, the camera zoomed in on Elena's face. Her skin glowed, her chestnut hair was perfect, and a tiny dimple appeared as she gave a quiet, satisfied smile. The plain wife was gone forever. Elena had arrived exactly where she was always meant to be, and this time, the whole world was cheering for her. They say that some people only find their true selves once everything they love has been burned to the ground. Today, we are here to witness the final resting place of a woman the world thought it knew. Today, we say goodbye to the plain wife. Let's remember her for a moment. She was the woman in the oversized navy sweater, the one who sat in the shadows of a stadium while her husband chased the lights. She was the one who traded her education for his promotion, her dreams for his deadlines, and her voice for his ego. She was the girl who believed that if she just stayed small enough and quiet enough, she would finally be enough for the man she loved. But that woman, the one who waited at home while a kiss can broadcast her heartbreak to 50 million strangers, is officially gone. She didn't break under the weight of Tyler's betrayal. She didn't disappear when the internet laughed at her. Instead, she used those insults as the foundation for a skyscraper. She took the silence Tyler demanded and turned it into a brand that a mogul couldn't ignore. So, we are burying the girl who was afraid of the camera. We are burying the girl who thought her value was tied to a man who didn't even know how to balance his own books. The plain wife is dead. She was replaced by Sophia, a woman who doesn't need a kiss cam to be seen, because she owns the whole stadium now. Elena Vance has finally stopped looking for herself in someone else's shadow. She's standing in her own light now, and honestly, it's the best she's ever looked. Rest in peace. Elena, the victim. Long live Elena, the queen.